Welcome back, subscribers, and welcome new viewers. Okay, I'm going to read just a short, it's really short, but it's essential for those of you who have Chiron in hard aspect to your nodes of the moon. So let's get started. And if any of you would like written copies for me to email them to you for this reading, just let me know. Send me a comment, leave me an email, and I would be happy to do that. Okay, Chiron in aspect to the moon's nodes. The nodes are a polarity by house and sign, and although one end may be weighed by natal aspects or stimulated by transits, the overall life development suggested by the nodes occurs through a cyclic exchange between them. Briefly, the north node represents uncharted territory where we must struggle, exercise our will, and make choices. It feels unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but applying ourselves to this area of life experience and learning its lessons bring considerable returns in terms of well-being and satisfaction. By contrast, the gifts, qualities, and issues represented at the South Node are already familiar and usually manifest themselves without undue effort. There we find our karmic inheritance, whether we think of this as family patterns or past lives or both. It is also our line of least resistance, where we retreat when the going gets tough. Although we can rest and creatively withdraw at the South Node, if we hide there, we may feel impoverished and fraudulent. We often need to release and let go of whatever the South Node represents, or put it in a form symbolized by the North Node and bring it forward. Chiron's themes appear most directly when it conjuncts or squares the nodes. Although any aspect can be of significance and should be considered in the Chiron configuration, this section is confined to comments about the square and conjunction. Okay, so it's specifically for those of you who have Chiron is squared to your nodes or conjunct to your nodes, which conjunct is right next to. Squared is squared. That's hard to explain, but anyway. So yeah, I don't know how to explain that. So if you don't know if yours is squared or not and you'd like me to tell you, just let me know. Okay, and I can do that. When Chiron squares the nodes, individuals may feel blocked by their wounds and limitations. They stumble over the same issues. Oh, I want to interject, but those of you who have Chiron opposing your nodes, even though this writer does not state that specifically, I would go ahead and listen to this because you can gain some knowledge, because opposition is another hard aspect. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me start that over. When Chiron squares the nodes, individuals may feel blocked by their wounds and limitations. They stumble over the same issues every time they try to go forward in life. And this writer's talking about the issues, the same issues that they struggle over, that you would struggle over, would be those suggested by the Chiron, whatever house your Chiron is in, and whatever sign your Chiron is in. They often have a strong sense of destiny, which will not let them rest. For example, one woman had Chiron in the 11th house, squaring her north node in the 2nd house and south node in the 8th house. She wanted to be a body therapist, but had a highly paid job with considerable political influence as a trade union official, 11th house. Although she completed a massage training and felt her true vocation to be in the area of personal transformation, 8th house, through healing the body, 2nd house, her attachment to having, quote, revolutionary power in the eyes of the collective, Chiron in the 11th house, made it difficult for her to change careers, when she knew that if she worked as a healer, it would be in relative obscurity. She eventually did give up her old job, and in time came to express her 11th house Chiron in Cancer in another way by teaching massage to groups of people, 11th house. Her specialty was helping people to reconnect with their feelings, Chiron in Cancer. With Chiron squaring the nodes, our limitations and wounds need to be included in our self-concept and idea of our purpose in life. Any attempts to forge ahead by trying to exclude them result in crisis. Our whole idea of self-actualization may need to be re-examined, perhaps transformed from an achievement-oriented and one-sided idea of, quote, spiritual progress, to one which addresses the whole person. For example, a man who had spiritual pretensions of which he was initially unaware ran therapy groups. He had Chiron in the 4th house in Libra, squaring the north node in Cancer in the 1st house and south node in Capricorn in the 7th. He blamed his wife and family, Chiron in Libra in the 4th house, for holding him back. He eventually left them, only to find that he felt so emotionally insecure, Chiron in the 4th house, and depressed that he was in fact no better off. The lives of people who have Chiron conjunct either node strongly reflect Chironian themes. They may embody one of the figures from the myth, leaving out the role of teacher, wise person, healer, mentor, savior, victim, sufferer, wounded one, wounder, acolyte, devotee, or apprentice. For example, Gandhi has Chiron conjunct the South Node in Aries. He embodied and personified his philosophy of non-violent revolution. Chiron in Aries can signify passive aggression. Even though it cost him and thousands of others their lives. Lorenz von der Post has Chiron conjunct the South Node in Aquarius in the 4th house. He is a typically Chironian figure who has bridged different cultures and had enormous impact on collective thinking. People with Chiron conjunct either node may have a strong sense of vocation in Chironian fields such as teaching or healing. Alternatively, they may have intimate relationships with therapists, priests, people who are ill or physically or mentally handicapped, or who represent in some way the mythic images and themes in the story of Chiron. For example, Jane Roberts has Chiron conjunct the North Node in Taurus, part of a stellium consisting of Chiron, Moon, Sun, Jupiter, and North Node, all in Taurus. Jane Roberts was a medium through whom an entity named Seth spoke. Numerous books of teachings were compiled from his addresses. She writes that she would often receive his communications when doing practical chores, Chiron and Taurus, although later these became formalized sessions. When Chiron is in hard aspect to the nodes, if its themes are not lived consciously, perhaps through commitment to a personal quest for consciousness or following a healing vocation, they usually manifest themselves anyway and can even take over the person's life in a negative way. For example, one person who had Chiron conjunct North Node in Capricorn in the 7th house alienated many of her friends. She often adopted a false tone of wisdom and benevolence without realizing it, giving unsought advice and making people feel patronized and therefore irritated. In fact, her father had been a teacher, and although she secretly felt a vocation in this direction, she had determined not to follow in her father's footsteps, as they were in perpetual conflict. And typical Chiron in Capricorn issue. A typical Chiron in Capricorn issue. Yeah, that makes sense. Karen Ann Quinlan has Chiron in Capricorn in the 2nd house, the apex of a T-square, also involving Venus and Aries in the 4th house, opposite Neptune in Libra in the 10th. She went into a coma in 1975 when transiting Chiron was exactly conjunct her Venus. During the following 10 years before she died, she lived the myth of Chiron literally. Unable either to die or to be healed, because that's Chiron, the wounded healer. Wow. Her T-square. Okay, so I'm going to start that sentence over. During the following 10 years before she died, she lived the myth of Chiron literally, unable either to die or be healed. Her T-square is also poignantly suggestive of the story of Sleeping Beauty. Wow. Our astrological natal wheels do not lie. They cannot lie ever, as long again as you have the only time they would not be accurate is if the exact time of your birth that you're putting in is not correct, is not accurate. That would give a an inaccurate reading for your natal, for anyone's natal wheel. When she finally did die, Mercury was exactly opposite her Mars in Sagittarius in the 10th house, a transit perhaps symbolic of Prince Charming awakening her to a new life beyond the physical realm. During the first year of her coma, she was on a respirator. Her parents fought and won a historic court case, gaining permission to turn it off and allow her to die. The legal system was challenged. Chiron / her nodes in Capricorn. The legal system, get right. Chiron, the wounded healer, / her north node in Capricorn. Capricorn has to do with the legal system. Wow. The right to refuse unwanted medical intervention and die a natural death became a controversial issue as the publicity surrounding the case grew. Wow. However, when the respirator was legally switched off, Karen Ann did not die for a further 9 years. At the time of her death, Chiron was in Gemini, opposite her Sagittarian ascendant. Her chart shows an interesting novel of transiting Chiron to her Uranus in Cancer in the 8th house, traditionally associated with death. That's right, the 8th house is the death and rebirth house, which is the natural house of Pluto and the zodiac sign Scorpio. Absolutely. Again, our astrological charts do not lie. Our nodes, absolutely. Our personal work, that's where our personal work is, each and every one of us, does not ever lie. Wow. So we cannot, there is no one to blame, ourselves or anyone else. Don't blame our parents because it's not them. It could be, of course, certain things passed down from generation to generation that weren't able to be taken care of before and passed down to us. That's true. That's nothing to blame. Rudheier describes the novel aspect 40 degrees as a period of tribulation and interior formation, like the archetypal 40 days in the wilderness. Michael R. Myers says, and I hope I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, it's Novile. Novile or novel is subjective or unmanifested growth. We will never know what she lived in her inner life during those years. If those with Chiron conjunct either node are unable or unwilling to take seriously their inner life and the urge for individuation, including both their gifts and their wounds, they sometimes unleash great destructiveness, becoming, quote, the one who wounds, unquote. Alternatively, they may compulsively try to, quote, heal situations, to make things better, always attracting people who need to be validated, redeemed, or healed. They can also become identified with the victim or become a scapegoat or outsider. Hitler has Chiron conjunct the North Node in Cancer in the 9th house, opposite his moon, Jupiter, and his south node. All conjunct in Capricorn in the 3rd house. His Chiron and node highlights his philosophy, 9th house. That's the higher mind, philosophy, higher education. His genocidal mission may be seen as a philosophically rationalized, that's Chiron in the 9th house, enactment of the anti-Semitism lying deep within the European collective psyche. There you go. See, we cannot judge anyone or blame anyone. We look in their chart, and it just said it about Hitler. That is, any of us at any point in time, if anyone would have done Hitler's chart before, during, or after, he would have done everything. And if he knew his chart, the one thing we can and have control over, the one thing in our charts, is the nodes of our moon. That's the one place where we have the ability and the privilege to finish our own creation and become our own created self from the parts that were given to us at birth, which isn't our own creation. We didn't create that. It came from somewhere else. Our parents, our grandparents, the universe, the stars. But the nodes, that's the one place. But you have to become consciously aware first. That's why I'm doing my channel. Wow. Big stuff. Big stuff. Yes. Wow. Okay, so Hitler, he strove to heal and safeguard his own race. Chiron in Cancer. Cancer has to do with family, and Cancers are very protective of their family, of tradition. Whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter. And then Chiron being there, that is the wounded healer. So there are fears there. So he had a fear, Chiron, past wounds of something. Cancerian past wounds. So let me read that again. He strove to heal and safeguard his own race, which is Chiron and Cancer, by eliminating another one. You can't make this stuff up. Wow. Hitler's own ancestry is uncertain, but recent research suggests that his grandfather was possibly Jewish, or that Hitler may have believed he was. And now more stuff is coming out about Hitler and different people in the past and recent past who are actually, for real, part of Hitler's lineage that have been secreted away. But I won't go into any further about that. That is coming out and will be common knowledge, hopefully soon. Thus, his attempt to exterminate the Jews can also be seen as an escalation. That's Chiron and Jupiter, because Jupiter expands whatever it's next to, and it expanded his Chiron. So his fears, his bad memories, it triggered his bad memories. And so not knowing any better, not saying what he did was right, not at all. But this is just showing what drove him to do what he did. Okay, so I know I stopped in the middle of this, I apologize, but these things come to me, I have to say them. Okay, so let me say that sentence over. Thus, his attempt to exterminate the Jews can also be seen as an escalation which is Chiron and Jupiter, of his desire for personal vengeance on his entire family, in whose hands he suffered brutal treatment as a child. There you go. Chiron and his moon. Moon is our feelings, and the moon can only receive energies. And he apparently received a lot of brutal treatment. But it shows astrologically where that came from. It's Chiron and moon playing itself out. And his parents, or whoever he was suffering, who was giving him the suffering, was just an actor or actress in his astrological natal play, in his own play. And again, playing out Chiron and moon for him. On an archetypal level, however, Hitler has been virtually mythologized Chiron and Jupiter as the Antichrist. There you go. Note that the last exact Chiron-Pluto conjunction in Leo in mid-July 1941 occurred in the 9th house of Hitler's chart, barely 1 degree off of his midheaven. This is it means huge indicator of his Plutonic vocation. Yes. Plutonic again, that's the 8th house, that's death and rebirth. That is, and Pluto is vicious. It doesn't care about emotions, doesn't care about anything. It is going to grind you to powder if you try and resist any Plutonian transformation. Pluto was just moving into Leo and thus squaring his Taurus sun. Pluto was squaring his Taurus sun, so it was squaring him. Pluto, transiting Pluto, was squaring him, his very self. The Chiron return can be a time of profound connection with one's true sense of vocation, of dedication to a path which will preoccupy the rest of one's life. As we will see in the next chapter, with significant points on the Chiron cycle, the positions of other planets are also an important influence. That's true. That's true. In this case, Pluto called and Hitler answered. There you go. And again, when it's dealing with your South Node and whatever other planets, Chiron, which is an asteroid, is involved, you're going to do your South Node. You're going to do that because that's the automatic programming that you were given at birth. And many of us do it our whole lives and die doing that same cycle over and over and over again, just in different variations of the same thing, creating more and more pain for us. But if you can't bring that out into your conscious awareness and know what that programming was, then you can never change it. Again, that's why I am so strong and hard-nosed, so to speak, and continuing to repeat myself. For some of you, you might think I'm repeating myself and saying how essential our North and South nodes, knowing this consciously, our South node, knowing that programming so that we can overcome it, bringing that out into our conscious awareness. No one else that I know of is doing this. And this is why I'm doing this. This is why I started my channel. So again, any of you who don't know, and you're probably not listening to this, but anyway, or want more information, let me know. Okay. Those with Chiron conjunct either node frequently become ardent devotees of a guru figure. Breaking away from such an attachment may prove difficult for them, if not impossible. Often the experience goes sour under the weight of unresolved parental issues, and they may turn vehemently against their former beliefs and spiritual principles. Although at first, people with this conjunction might have a pressing need for an external figure to help them connect with their inner source of guidance, eventually they will usually be forced to find their own way. On the other hand, people with this conjunction can be naturally charismatic and attract to themselves a following. The shadow side of this is being unable to take advice, suggestions, or guidance from anyone to their cost. One woman with Chiron conjunct the South Node in Gemini in the third house spent most of her adult life as a teacher. When Neptune opposed this conjunction by transit, she sold all her belongings, gave up her job, and joined a spiritual community. After a long and intense involvement with the guru and preoccupation with her own spiritual journey, she found herself with no money and little inclination to make her separate way in the world. Her Chiron return brought some hard lessons as she was forced to do menial clerical work, third house, in order to survive financially. Okay. That is all I have for you. All right. I hope that was helpful. Until next time.